Thanks. I'm really glad that the voice of God at this conference is a woman. Usually, what they, that's a good sign. Around the end of 2013, my Twitter feed in the morning, I started to see news of the first Google bus protest, where people were lying their bodies in front of the Google bus to prevent it from bringing its employees from San Francisco down to the Google campus. And it was right around the time of the NSA stuff, when we knew that Google was part of maybe spying on us and all. And it really fed into my own kind of disgruntlement about the way things were turning out. And I retweeted a bunch of those. And these were good photos they got. They put signs on the Google bus saying gentrification and eviction technologies, and they wore cool, eventually these sort of Google-colored outfits. And I thought, this is interesting, that there's something being expressed here. Then a few weeks later, there was another Google bus protest in Oakland where they started throwing rocks at the bus. And I thought, I've got friends on these buses. Howard Rheingold's daughter, Mamie, I named my own daughter after her. She's on those buses getting rocks. Something's wrong, and the people on the bus, I understand, they moved into San Francisco and raised the prices of rents, doubled them or tripled them, and then just commute down to Google in these sort of alien spaceship-like buses with Wi-Fi. And that the rents right around the bus stops were going up 30% higher than they were elsewhere. So something really seemed wrong with this picture, that this company, Google, who were the good guys, Google, who were the ones who were supposed to not just do no evil, but whose whole company, if you were around, was an alternative to Yahoo. Yahoo was the table of contents of the internet decided by some people somewhere, and Google was going to be the link-based, algorithmic, bottom-up, democratic information engine that was somehow going to help create value for us all. The internet was supposed to create value for us all. We were all supposed to be at home in our underwear, working in our own time, exchanging things in a peer-to-peer, Etsy, Burning Man-like way. And now the biggest, goodest internet company of them all was somehow working against the people in the very place it moved. But do we throw rocks at the people in the bus? No, the people in the bus, who are they? They're programmers who've gotten out of Stanford or MIT or whatever college they've gotten out of. They pass all the tests and get to work at Google and hope that they can last average 3.5 years? A programmer is able to survive there until they are burned out. They just want to make a few $100,000 before they're, spending it all on SSRIs and whatever they need to recover from their programming experiences. So it's like, okay, it's not those guys' fault. It's whoever's pushing them to produce, who's ever driving them that way. Well, that's their managers, I guess, who are answering to the CEO. So we could blame the CEO, but who's the CEO answering to? To shareholders with retirement funds, with S&P index funds in there that are going to sell Google if Google doesn't grow. And those people are us. Those of us, anyone who's got a retirement plan. So who's to blame? The thing that's to blame, I would say, is not necessarily the people in the bus or running the company or the shareholders so much as a blindness to the entire mechanism. This addiction to growth-based economics, the way that we surrendered a potentially revenue-generating, prosperity-creating platform to the agenda of very short-term, investor-based corporate capitalism. And what it's done is it's taken and I was here in 94, 95, it's taken our early internet, Mondo 2000, fringeware, Austin, weird peer-to-peer shareware, sustainable economic vision, and converted it through the early libertarian Wired magazine into the poster child of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. NASDAQ and the rest of the market had crashed in 1987 because of the biotech boom and bust. And now the internet was supposed to somehow save that. And we saw a few companies grow from 0 to $1 billion in a year or two, and investors think, that's it. This is my ticket to wealth. So rather than looking at internet companies, in particular startups, digital companies, as ways to create great long-term prosperous businesses, they look at them more as a casino, as a way to somehow make bank in 12 to 18 months. And when you want to make bank in 12 to 18 months, you don't do it by creating a long-term sustainable business. It's not the same thing. That's why we can see Twitter, which is still one of my favorite apps. Twitter, which for 140 character SMS messages, this company has revenue of $500 million a quarter. It's pretty good revenue for something that small. $500 million a quarter, that's $2 billion a year. But the company is considered an abject failure by Wall Street because the people who came in at the lower levels of this investment pyramid, they want to make 100x or 1,000x return on Twitter. And they're not going to do it if this company is only making a mere $500 million a quarter because they invested at such sky-high valuations. So now Twitter is going to, like many, many startups, is going to be forced to pivot. That's the nice word for it. To pivot away from whatever the founder's original vision for creating value and helping people and doing great things, pivot away from that and towards a much more scorched earth strategy to become the everything of everyone. That's what Twitter has to be bigger than Facebook, bigger than Google. Twitter has to be the thing, the meta thing, the mega thing. And it was such a good little thing. It was a really big little thing. And I'm already using the past tense, which is so sad. And as they gear up to try to pivot to whatever this is, users are already starting to, their user base is slowing down and declining because you can feel it when you're using an app. You can feel it when it's trying to suck that extra bit of value from you. And what happens, what the startup pivot is really about is transitioning a company from a potentially prosperous company that distributes prosperity everywhere it goes to a scorched earth monopoly. And so what we see is capital being respected and valued as a contribution to the company, but land and labor, the other two factors of production, being ignored. Right? Look in any economics textbook, and this is since Adam Smith and before, we recognize there's three things that lead to not just prosperity, but to production: land, labor, and capital. But once a company brings in the VC, all of a sudden the VC is the one running the company. You know, those nice guys in sweaters from those venture capital funds. And these are kids running these companies. They just came out of college, so their college professors, you know, now their new college professor mentor are these great VC guys. And what are these VC guys teaching them? It's how to get to acquisition or IPO. And that's a very different thing than how to run a company. To get to acquisition and IPO, you have to use the same good old-fashioned scorched earth policies of a Walmart or any other company that we might not like, because you're just going to get big. So you look at a company like Amazon. Right? Does Amazon care about the books industry? Of course not. Amazon is happy to sell books below cost. Amazon's happy to put any publisher out of business. Amazon's not about returning value to its authors. The book industry to Amazon is a vertical. That's all it is. It's a vertical that if it can establish a platform monopoly in that vertical, it can use that monopoly to hop over into another vertical, whether it's drones or clouds or something else. So it doesn't look at the book industry as something that it has to develop and maintain. It's not about creating, and I always use that word, ecosystem. It's never about creating an ecosystem. It's about extracting whatever value it can from one sector in order to establish a monopoly and then move over into the other. And do you think Uber cares about maintaining a community, an economy of driving? That's not Uber's job. Uber wants to establish a platform monopoly in taxis so it can hop over into logistics or robotic cars. So here you have unemployed people driving Uber cars, basically working, doing the R&D for a company that will cut them out as soon as they can automate that job. So you're doing the R&D for a robot company without getting a piece of it. So these companies are becoming, and we're using the digital logic to create software that's really geared to extract value from people and places and convert it into share price. That's what the digital economy has become. It's business plans which are really expressing themselves as software and platforms that extract value from people and places and convert it into share price only, rather than putting it into circulation. This is just old corporate capitalism on new digital steroids. We're running what I'm going to argue is a 13th century economic operating system that was developed by the aristocracy of the early Renaissance to extinguish a rising peer-to-peer economy, something that was as fabulous as the early internet economy that we were building. If you look back historically, when did this program start? This is all we're talking about is a program. It's an unacknowledged operating system. That's the funny thing. We've got great founders, great developers who are so willing to challenge one industry or another, to disrupt an industry. I'll disrupt journalism. I'll disrupt music. I'll disrupt books. But what's the first thing they do when they have any measure of success at disrupting? Is they go to the equivalent of daddy at Goldman Sachs and say, oh, look, I did some disruption. Now, how do I get to my IPO? So they surrender all of that disruption to the biggest and baddest industry on the block, the unacknowledged operating system under all of this. But when they let you ring the bell at the morning of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, it's not because you've done something disruptive. They let you ring the bell because you have confirmed the premise, the centrality of corporate capital to the entire scheme. And that's an old scheme, right? That's an old scheme that if we don't recognize that it is not a condition of nature, it is not. It is a marketplace that was put in place by real people at a particular time. Everybody talks about gamifying finance and gamifying the economy. The economy is already gamified. Non-gamified finance would just be people trading stuff with each other. We gamified it. Why did we gamify it? The reason we gamified it is because right after feudalism, in the late Middle Ages, after the Crusades, people came back from the Crusades with all this cool stuff and all these cool technologies. And one of the things they came back with, what I would call a technology even, a mechanism, was the bazaar. It was from the Ottoman Empire, really, the bazaar. The bazaar was the marketplace where people could exchange things in a peer-to-peer fashion. And the bazaar had a lot of cool innovations, local currencies, market monies. We can't go into all of them. But they had all different ways of trading that were all optimized to promote the circulation of value between people, to make it easier for people to exchange. And people got wealthy as a result. That was the biggest, if you want to really look at wealth, that was the greatest wealth for the masses ever. People went from being peasants to being the middle class. Of course, we're supposed to hate the middle class, the burghers, the bourgeois. But they were named that by the aristocracy because these people were threatening the aristocracy. The aristocracy had only known how to extract value since they were feudal lords for 1,000 years maybe. Now, all of a sudden, there's people creating and exchanging value, and the aristocracy got scared. So they put in place two really simple mechanisms. One, the chartered monopoly, or what we now call the corporation. Chartered monopoly meant the king will grant you exclusive dominion over an industry. Your shoes, you're the East Indies, you are boat making. So if anybody wanted to do the thing that they used to do, if you were a craftsperson who made shoes, you couldn't sell your shoes anymore. Now you went to His Majesty's Royal Shoe Company and sold your time. That's when we put the clocks up in the middle of towns, by the way, in the clock tower, because now instead of creating and exchanging value, you were working as employees for time. Jobs, we always talk about trying to create and keep jobs today. Jobs are an artifact of that moment in history. I don't really want a job. I don't think anybody really wants a job. We want stuff. But a job? No, a job where you have to sell your time, that's what slavery really was based on, that your time is not your own. It's not about being valued for the value you create, it's being valued for the time you put in. And the other great invention they came up with was central currency. So now we weren't allowed to trade with market monies. Now if we wanted to trade with each other, we had to borrow money from a central treasury and pay it back at interest. What does that mean? If you're paying back everything you borrow at interest, it means the economy has to grow. That's basic math. The economy has to grow, and growth is fine as a result of business activity, but growth as a requirement of business activity, that you have to grow in order to stay still, that's a problem too. It worked for colonial empires, or at least for the empires. It didn't work for all the people they enslaved and the places they took over, but at least there were, mathematically speaking, if you don't care about humans, it worked. And as long as we had room to grow, growth-based currency was a fine operating system. But around Eisenhower's time after World War II, it's like, oh shoot, we've run out of room to grow, and all these brown people are pushing back. They don't want our colonialism. We can't just extract the value out of their land and enslave these people anymore. What are we going to do? Uh-oh. And Eisenhower and his advisors thought, technology could be a good solution for this, because technology can create a kind of a virtual surface area on a planet that is shown its limits to us. The other problem, though, with corporatism was now people were being alienated or disconnected from the value they created. Instead of creating a shoe, now I'm working for time. And when a company looks at that, they're thinking, well, gosh, I want to get as many humans out of the equation as possible. Industrialism was not about making things faster or better. It was about making them cheaper and getting labor out of the way. When you're going to run a shoe company, are you going to hire the very best shoemakers into your... No, of course not. We say yes. Oh, yes, I want the best. No, you don't. You want to go to the Home Depot parking lot and find an undocumented alien to bring in someone you can train in 15 minutes to put one nail in the shoe, and then if he gets angry at you, you can fire him in a second. You don't want a qualified workman that you're going to have to pay money for. Industrial processes were all about making things easy to make so that you could have cheaper and cheaper labor. And that's the relationship to technology that we've got to flip. That's the same relationship to technology that we have today. And that's why leading economists say, oh, this is inevitable. The better the technology, the more money will be brought into capital and the worse it is for labor. It's just the way it is. But it's actually kind of stupid. Now, remember the first time that I really felt technology was being used inappropriately to automate a human function was when they replaced receptionists at companies with those computers. And I understand the company saves money because they don't have to pay for a living person. Now they just have a computer, and says, oh, push 1 for this, push 2 for that. But everybody who calls that company spends more time dealing with this crazy menu to try to get through to the end. So more money is being spent. It's just been externalized. But now everyone that company calls is getting one of those menus too. So now everybody is spending all of this extra time doing this craziness. Meanwhile, your customer support is getting worse, your investor relations are getting worse. The actual quality of your business is going down, even if you've made it cheaper in the short term and cheaper for your company, disconnected from all of the others. And what we found is that this approach to business isn't just a startup new digital economy thing. That this extractive approach, this zero-sum approach to business is actually killing corporate America. That for the last 70 years, according to a Deloitte study, the Shift Index they did in 2011, for the last 70 years, corporate profit over net value has been going down. So get that. Corporate profit over the net value of the company has been going down. That's strange. What it really means is corporations are really good at collecting money, but really progressively worse at deploying it. It's a kind of financial obesity where they can pull all the chips off the table. But once they've done that, there's no one left to be a customer. There's no one left to create value. There's nothing left for them to do. So they do mergers and acquisitions is what they do to create the illusion of growth. And as we know, 80% of mergers and acquisitions lose money for both partners. You can buy Tumblr for $1 billion, but that's not going to help you, Yahoo. $1 billion, a company that had no revenue. I don't mean to sound old-fashioned. But I do get calls, and this is interesting because I'm some, internet thinker person. I get calls from the CEOs of Fortune 100 companies who invite me into their office, into their secret little den, and they tell me the truth. And it's always from a communication standpoint. They say, Doug, how can I communicate better with my shareholders? Well, what do you want to communicate to your shareholders? I want to communicate to them that if we keep chasing growth, the company is going to die. If we keep chasing growth, our company is going to fail. Because the way that they chase growth, because they have to show growth to the VC, to the shareholders, is by cannibalizing themselves. And they do all these things, one-term write-offs and all these different things that are basically eating themselves in order to create the illusion of growth. And now that they have to compete against all of us, digital startups with our digitally inflated poker chips, they've got to do it even more. They've got to take some of these digital steroids in order to create illusions of even more growth. Digital was supposed to be the fix because digital is the steroids. But it doesn't actually work. What digital does, as we've all seen, is it creates power law dynamics. So the same thing that happens on iTunes when Taylor Swift gets $1 billion and everyone else gets zero, when we used to have a music world where everybody could make some, that power law dynamic of winners and losers, of winner takes all, ends up affecting everybody. It ends up affecting every company. It's even affecting banking and even affecting investment. It goes meta on itself. We're in a meta bubble, a bubble. And it also extracts so much value from the playing field that we don't have any more cash to give them. We don't have money. Uber bankrupts drivers the same way that Walmart bankrupts communities. Do you know there's Walmarts going out of business right now because they were so good at vacuuming value out of their communities that there's no more customers? If you work for Walmart, you're on welfare. If you didn't work for Walmart, you're out of business. So they're actually closing stores because they vacuumed out. They vacuumed out. And digital companies are better at vacuuming than brick and mortar companies. Digital companies are not doing anything different than traditional corporations did. They're just doing it faster because they have the acceleration of digital technology on their side. It's the steroids, or the speed maybe. So then what happens when there's no more money? They start trying to value things that actually aren't worth anything. So now it's likes and data. But there's all these companies willing to extract from us our data, begging for our likes, because it's this weird sort of virtual currency marker. It's I almost want to read Bart or something. It's a signifier of something, but it's not actually real. How much is our data worth if we don't have any money? How do they care? Why would they care? But our technology is configured for that last end game of data and likes. Every time you use your smartphone's getting smarter about you, but you're getting dumber about it. Every stroke, everything is somehow concatenated to create a marketing profile through which you could be influenced. The sad thing, well, maybe it's the happy thing actually, is that has to die too. Because marketing and advertising and market research has never, ever accounted for more than about 4% of GDP. And it stayed pretty constant. This is for a long, long time. And that's because there's a certain point at which if we're all doing everything for advertising, what's left to advertise? If even your banana is a milk advertisement and your razor is a software advertisement, who's getting the revenue to actually advertise? You can't. That's why it gets fixed at around 4%. So what I'm arguing is that by taking a 21st century peer-to-peer digital economy and trying to run it on a 13th century extractive corporate central currency-based operating system, we get the worst of both worlds. We get the Walmart effect, but really fast. And I do believe that there are ways to fix this. And I don't think that we do it from the top. I don't think it's a matter so much anyway. It's not a matter of who we vote for. Because, even Bernie Sanders, God bless him, what is he talking about doing? He's talking essentially about redistributing the spoils of capitalism after the fact. How do we do better watchdogging? As if, and he always talks about it as if some great economic system has been corrupted by bad actors. There's some bad actors there, but this is an operating system working exactly as it was programmed to. It's just we've forgotten that it's a program, we've forgotten who programmed it, we forgot what biases it was programmed for, and we've forgotten that we are the ones in charge of reprogramming it to do something else. And I'm going to try with my remaining time to share some of these strategies, some of these tactics, but honestly, there is no instant update. There's not a software update to change this, and you cannot turn around your company, your life, your political approach with a TED Talk. I'd love to give you an 11-minute, here you go, now you're different. It doesn't. This has been going on for 400 years. Right? So what I'm asking you, and it's not about selling, I'm asking not for your money, I'm asking for your time. What I'm asking is give me 4 hours. Take 4 hours to read this. I'm going to try to outline some of the techniques and the tactics, but it's not so much the individual tactics that I've given you, because there is no one-size-fits-all industrial age solution to our problem. The beauty of a distributed digital age is there are as many solutions as there are players. There are as many solutions as there are characters in this game. So what I can give you are the principles through which you can reclaim your authority to devise your own business plan, to optimize for the velocity of transactions, for the velocity of money through your community and your marketplace, rather than the extraction of value from your marketplace. The whole idea, the easiest way to understand it is, if you take a vacuum cleaner to your marketplace and suck out the money, where's your marketplace? It's been bankrupted. If instead you figure out ways to make money circulate through your marketplace, you get the same dollar 5, 10, 20 times. You end up capable of sustaining a business rather than bursting a business. Yes, you can choose the other, like the people on welfare who go to the bodega and spend their welfare checks on lottery tickets. You can do that. Take this, I'm sure 100 of you in this room have a great idea and you're thinking, I got to get VC. And you're going to go overvaluate and go down this path. Gegazint, as Grandma would say. But what if your idea could have actually worked? What if your idea could have actually led to a sustainable company? What if your idea could have helped people? Gosh, don't sell it. Don't sell it. The people buying your businesses are not buying them to run your business. They're buying your business to flip your business. And if you're going to flip this house with your company, then just acknowledge that's what you're doing. Understand that you see it as a Las Vegas, Atlantic City thing. It's all world's going to hell in a handbasket, but at least I'm going to have a place to vacation in Aspen. That's okay if that's where you're at, but do it consciously. I ask you that. Do it consciously. If you want to try something else, well, first, I'll give you 10 ideas. First, read my book, all right? Read my book. Steal my book. Go on, do whatever but read it, all right? I've been paid already. Read it. That's the beautiful thing of the advanced corporate capitalism. So first, the meta principle is optimize for the velocity of money rather than the accumulation of capital. Right? Your company can't be a piece of software that converts working assets into static, dead, frozen capital. Your VC won't like to hear that right away. So I think what you need to do, particularly if you have a big company, this is what I try to tell those giant Fortune 100 executives, what you need to do is help your shareholders understand that they would be better off collecting long-term dividends from your business than capital appreciation to sell your stock. It would be great if we optimized the taxation system for dividends over capital gains. Right now, capital gains are barely taxed, but if you actually earn money, you're punished. You know, if we want to optimize the economy for the circulation of value rather than the extraction, we have to have a reverse tax policy, but good luck with that. Second great principle to think about is make your customers rich. It's really simple. Make them rich. Google almost got that insight with YouTube, where they thought, rather than just slapping ads on people's videos that they're uploading for free and taking money, what if we cut them in on the proposition? I mean, they should cut them in a lot. Wouldn't it be cool if you could actually get rich with your YouTube videos? I mean, now you can get a trickle. But how can you cut in your customers on that? How can you create a platform that lets them make money? I'm not talking Uber, which lets them eke by and die. But even something, and I know they went a little evil, but even something like eBay was such a better business model, as I see it, for the internet than Amazon. Amazon depends on destroying vertical after vertical. eBay helps people trade stuff that they had in their attics and their basements, so they're creating value in a peer-to-peer way. And at this point, eBay's no worse than Etsy or any other public company that's really not, it can't be about making its users wealthy at the expense of making its shareholders wealthy. There's a lot of experiments I talk about in this book. If you have a working company, a big company, I would say the hardest thing is you can't just flip your company on a dime. You can't just like BP say, oh, we're now beyond petroleum. We're not again. Everybody goes nuts. They'll push you away. What you can do if you're a big company, what you can do if you're the person in meetings at a big company, at ideation meetings, you don't have to be the CEO to say, what if we try a little experiment like this? What if we just do a little prototype like that? And these would be simple things. So if you worked at Chase and you're in a meeting, even a marketing meeting, which most people here are more marketing than we are operations, say, well, what about as a little marketing stunt, as a little PR thing, what if we go to a town and instead of just giving people 100% of the loan that they want to borrow, what if we give them, particularly small businesses, we'll call it the Small Business Crowdfunding Initiative, that a pizzeria comes to our bank for $100,000 to expand the restaurant and put in 2 new bathrooms. We tell them, we'll give you $50,000 of that loan if you can raise $50,000 from your community using this great little app that we've made for that purpose. So then what the company, what the Joe's Pizzeria has to do is sell for $100 each, he can sell $120 worth of pizza at the new restaurant, at the expanded restaurant. And if he can get $50,000 of that, then the bank has essentially buy-in from the community on the loan. The bank is no longer seen now as an extractor of value from the community, but someone who has helped the community invest in itself. Imagine, you're one of those people, you've put in $100, now you've got $120 of pizza, that's 20% return, which is better than you're going to do at Smith Barney, I promise you that. Plus, the money that you've put in has made your Main Street in your downtown better. It's made, first there's a better restaurant, now you can get a table when you couldn't before, but now your Main Street is more thriving. So when your Main Street's more thriving, your tax base goes up, your real estate value goes up, your schools start doing better, and it's circulating more money inside your company. You can do so many things like that. At any big, evil, icky company can do these little things, and then those become the proof of concept for the idea, which has to get through their heads, that extracting one way isn't the best way to do business. That circulating value is great because that same money comes around again and again and again. The local supermarket, the big chain supermarket, can take its parking lot on Sundays and let people do farmers markets there. Embrace the so-called competition. Then at the end of the day, the stuff they haven't sold, bring it into the supermarket and sell it on your own shelves. Let Walmart have one shelf, one aisle of locally produced goods. It's a novelty. These are easy. Another thing I talk about is how to do bounded investing. The steelworkers, really smart union. Steelworkers had this giant retirement fund, and they were thinking, how are we going to invest this thing? What are we going to do with all this money? What they started to do was to invest in building projects that hired steelworkers. Duh. So now they get the same. Not only do they get the investment, but they get the money right back into their own pockets. And you can do that 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, or invest in housing projects that retired steelworkers go live in. So again and again and again, you recoup the same money. An easy one is the platform cooperative. Uber could still save itself. It could still save itself. All it needs to do is between now and when they actually go public, set aside 10% of the shares for the drivers. Easy, based on how much work they've actually done. So now instead of doing R&D for a company that means to replace them, they're going to participate in the ongoing value creation of the company even after their jobs are gone. That's so simple. I know, but 10%? Oh my God. 10% for labor? For labor? I thought we got rid of labor. Another great model is the family business. Most people don't know this, but family businesses do better on pretty much every metric than shareholder-run enterprises. The only time when family businesses don't do as well as shareholder enterprises is during bubbles. And it turns out you don't want to be doing that well during a bubble, because that means you're going to crash. Family businesses do better in the long term, because the people running family businesses aren't thinking of them as, how much money do I need to take out of this business so I can give an inheritance to my grandchild? People running a family business think, no, how can I run this business to be durable and sustainable enough so it's still running when my grandchild can come to the helm? It's a very different approach. So now you don't want to bankrupt the communities where you operate. You don't want to make your workers hate you, and your name is on this thing. So you don't want to create awful products and poison people and ruin the topsoil and do everything that a public company can do with no shame. It's just business. Complementary currencies are a great one. And I'm not really just talking about blockchain and Bitcoin here. I mean really simple things like time dollars and local currencies. And there's a lot of very simple ways that you can create trade. If you have people with needs and people with skills, you have the basis for an economy. Right now we think, our policymakers think, oh, in order to get that economy moving, I've got to get a bank to lend money to a corporation to build a factory to hire those people in jobs. Making crap that nobody wants, and they're going to either ruin the topsoil or store them in storage units, all in the name of growth. But complementary currencies can allow people without cash to begin trading. That's all it's about. There's new corporate structures. If we're in a digital age, we should be able to reconceive the corporate charter. We're using the same corporate charter that we made in 1300. Those are the principles. 1300, that was a long time ago. Different people, different mood, different culture even. Whether it's a B Corp or a multiple purpose corp. I'm seeing people become the most successful, believe it or not, with not-for-profit corporations. Sounds crazy, but if you have a not-for-profit corporation, then your corporation basically can't be sold. That's the main thing. You can still make revenue, you can still pay yourself whatever you want, you can have a huge salary. It's just not-for-profit means that we're not going to be flipped. I promise you, no one's going to do a hostile takeover of a not-for-profit. And finally, and this is something that GE is relearning now. GE, back in the 80s and 90s under Jack Welch, they realized that they make more money lending money to people to buy washing machines than they did making washing machines. So they sold all of their, or most of their, productive businesses. They sold their industry businesses in order to become more like a bank. And that worked great until around 2007 when all the banks had a problem, and GE wasn't a particularly good bank. It just had a lot of money. So now they're getting back into actually making things. I think that's what you have to do in a digital economy in particular. For a long-term success strategy is don't get further from value creation, get closer to value creation. Digital, this is what digital means. Digits are the fingers. A digital media environment is a hands-on value-creating environment. That's what the shareware scene was about, and shareware worked just fine. As you're starting a company, you've really got to think, do I just want to sell this, or do I believe enough in the value that I'm creating to do this for a while? I just hate to think of people starting up companies they don't even like. Starting up companies what about starting up a company where the thing that you'll have to do to run that company is something that you like? Novel. Something that you would do for a whole bunch of years because that's your job. You're not repulsed by the concept of working for a living. No, it's really not that bad. No, that's what we're retrieving. Those are the values that we're retrieving in what I think is a genuine renaissance of perhaps unprecedented magnitude. That's why we see Burning Man. That's why we see all of these little hands-on artisan craft beers. We can joke and tease for the heirloom eggplants. But people are making a living at it. And what do super rich people do when they retire anyway? They make little craft beers and knitting, and they go do the stuff that we're all going poo-poo at. No, it's a matter of getting closer to value creation and agreeing that that is okay. The leading economists now, the people I've been debating with, are saying that technology always delivers more value to capital and takes it away from labor. That people will always get automated out of their ability to make a living. And these same technologists say that that is inevitable, and it is never-ending, and it will ultimately lead to the singularity, where the machines really just run the show and keep humans around only as long as they need to keep themselves operating. That the more autonomy we give to these technologies, the less of a role there will be for people. I don't agree with that. I don't think what they're acknowledging is that you're not talking about giving autonomy to a piece of technology. You're talking about programming our technologies with the values of 13th century extractive, growth-based corporate capitalism. And that's a very, very different thing. Our technologies will do what we want them to do. Now, I genuinely believe that here on planet Earth, human beings still have the home field advantage. We're the natives here, and the tools that we're making are not. The tools that we're making are the aliens. And if it really comes down to it, we are the ones. We are the ones who can actualize and potentiate an economy that creates value for us. All I want you to really do, and then we can have some conversation. All I really want you to do is take the time to think about it, whether it's reading my book or just stop, right, and take 4 or 5 hours and think on your own about it. And then join the others, the other humans, the other members of Team Human, if you want to think about it that way, to reboot the economy for distributed human prosperity rather than the extraction of value from what we have left. Okay, thanks a lot. Oh, and I'm going to be, after this, we've got 100 books here that I can sign and sell. If you go out the back door, down an escalator to the 3rd floor, there's a bookstore. And I'll be there. If we run out of books, I brought little book plates so I can sign those for books that you get through your own local distributor. All right, so let us, oh, see, this is automatic. You've all been disintermediated here. It's all on the tweet. Am I allowed to say the name of the person who tweeted it?
Sure, go ahead.
Emily Graff.
Emily Graff.
Emily Graff, come on down.
Is it problematic that companies like Google and Facebook, et cetera, are such powerful symbols of success for digital natives?
It is a problem that companies like Google and Facebook are such powerful symbols of success for digital natives, because those are the stories that we end up telling. That's the folklore, that's the mythology of the internet. I remember the day that AOL bought Time Warner. Now, I was basically a counterculture, psychedelic, fringe-weary guy. And here I was being called by the New York Times to write the op-ed on AOL's acquisition of Time Warner. Wow, a business story. And I wrote the op-ed and I told the truth. I said, oh, well, this means the dot-com boom is going to come to an end. Steve Case is cashing in his chips. He understands that they're inflated. He wants to spend them on something real because the whole thing's going to go. And it's going to be bad for everyone. And the New York Times looked at it and they said, we can't print this. They showed it to their business people, their business writers and all, and they said, this is insane, you're so pessimistic. Everyone says this is a good deal. This means the internet has arrived. I said, no, it means that the internet's moving from the society and culture and future page to the business page. It's going to become the reification of business as usual. No, you're crazy, Doug, you're crazy. Of course, well, the Guardian printed it, first off, and they're doing pretty well now. The Guardian printed it, and of course it turned out to be true. It was one of the worst, acquisition disasters in American corporate history. But it made a winner out of Steve Case. Mark Zuckerberg has billions. It's hard to distinguish. What I think young people need to do is understand that first, the odds against doing that are so small. The odds against being Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs or one of these people who flipped into the giant thing, to being the Tumblr people who managed to get $1 billion off a dying Yahoo. It's almost like a scam. I mean, in the book I talk about, what was it, Draw Something, remember that app? It peaked, Draw Something, it had a zillion billion downloads, and they sold it like the day of its most downloads, they sold it to Zynga. And got $1 zillion. And they were almost, I saw them like a week later, and they were kind of embarrassed. They were almost sheepish because they understood what had happened. They pivoted their way to a sale. I think what we need to do is to start trumpeting and celebrating examples of people who just make millions. Just millions. If you can make, I know it's déclassé, but there's people who make a few $1 million a year in businesses that actually create and distribute value, that it's not that hard to do. But you're right, in the culture that we're in, gosh, look who's running for president these days. In the culture that we're in, what is being celebrated? The more violent and winner takes all the landscape is, the more you want to be someone who can protect yourself from that. The more we think about getting, the Gini number in economics, it's the measure of how distributed income is. The worse it gets, the more divided it gets, the more you really want to be one of these. But if you can start actualizing systemic change through very small examples, it works. The other thing to do is to help young people not think in terms of scale all the time. I get a lot of emails from people, the good, lefty, progressive people who want to fix the world and make things right. And they'll email me with something like, well, I want to create the website that aggregates all of the websites that help aggregate people who do social good. It's like everybody wants to be the meta thing on top of the thing on top of the thing, to have the giant industrial age solution for the global universal truth. What they have to realize is a distributed era, a distributed digital era, is actually extremely local. It reifies the local. It reifies your own human-scaled world. There's nothing wrong with having a business that is local, with having a solution that is local. People can still write about it. You can put it on the net. People can model it. But the longest running, most sustainable businesses will be ones that are not inspired to scale up. Scaling up is actually the enemy. And if people can start thinking about that scaling up is being sacrificed on the cross of corporate capitalism, that's surrendering yourself to Wall Street, and your ideals are going to be shattered, we can slowly flip the script on that. The other thing we can do is just show how few people do it. Oh, do you want a 1 out of 10 million chance of your company succeeding, or 1 out of 20? It's like your pick. Oh, Claire Jordan, can you speak more? I can read them.
All right.
But you can help me if I get stuck.
All right.
Can you speak more to the concept of complementary currency and its impact? This is a new one to me. Well, more is in here. and it's cheap. Use complementary currency. It's hard to buy corporate goods with complementary currency. Basically, complementary currencies can be any currency that we create to promote exchange over the extraction of value. So I talk about a bunch of them in the book. The ones that I like most right now are let's systems, which are kind of like time dollars. Really, the idea is that everybody starts at zero, and you work money into existence. So you could base your currency on babysitting hours. So a kid babysits, they get credited 1 babysitting hour, and I get debited 1. And you can only go down so far until, maybe you are allowed to go 200 babysitting hours into the red, and you're only allowed to go 200 or 300 into the green or into the black, depending on your model. So then what you're having is a currency that's more based in permitting transaction. It's not really for savings. You still have regular, good old-fashioned long-distance currency to buy your iPhone, to buy your car, to get the things that you need from corporate America. But what it does is enables market activity, lateral market activity between people and local businesses. So you end up with an economy that is both local and global, which is really the only way to do it. It's just a matter of tipping the balance. Right now, we buy a heck of a lot more from Walmart that comes from China and slave labor and God knows what than we need to. And it's not because it's more efficient. Local agriculture is more efficient than big agri. It just doesn't look that way because we pay for the roads and the gas and the pollution and the topsoil depletion and everything else that the big agri creates. Unilever, e-commerce. Unilever is an interesting company. Unilever is actually part of a very, very small consortium of businesses that are trying to unwind this thing. And luckily they have a big enough war chest that they can go, hey, we kind of have enough money to maybe stop just taking and look at something else. How do big and established businesses get to the business ideals you've talked about? Slowly. Slowly. You don't turn on a dime. The first thing you have to do is communicate a new value set to your shareholders so they don't revolt. What I'm arguing, the way big companies can do it is with little experimental prototypes, little trials of things that are functioning the way you would want an economy to function. And those are the kinds of things I talk about. There's maybe 50 of them in the book, but you really invent your own based on your own business. Do those little experiments, and then when you see the returns, when you see what you've done, you have a good argument for doing it more. The other rationale you can use at a big company is we have to do economic development of our markets because they're going broke. The same way when Coca-Cola looks at Africa, Walmart has to look at America. Benjamin Speer, does digital portend the end of capitalism? No, it doesn't. I wouldn't want people to think that what I'm saying is we're going to tweak the operating system and then the whole thing becomes, now we're just distributive recirculating. No, but what we have to do is optimize more for the circulation of value and a little bit less for the accumulation of capital in dead share price. No, big old people need capital. Capital does a lot of things. You want to build a bridge or something. You want to make Tesla rockets. You need some capital. Capital is great for certain kinds of things. It's just not appropriate to use the power of capital to destroy local markets, to destroy local businesses. Most everybody at this conference is taking Uber cars. We should know better. We should know better. Talk to the guys who are driving the real cars, or driving an Uber car and talk to them and ask them how well they're doing. We can't just perpetuate a model that doesn't work. And finally, I've got 5 if we want. Chandler, Chanhattan, I bet she's from New York. Is the Red Queen effect, moving twice as fast to go anywhere, just an MBA theory? How is it practiced by business leaders? It's all based on the acceleration of extraction. The problem with an interest-based currency model, to the exclusion of all others, is not just that we have to grow, but that we have to grow faster every year. You have to have better quarter over quarter, year over year growth than you did before, because your balance sheet your balance sheet ends up growing exponentially. And as you will know, in nature, there is no such thing as exponential growth. There really is not. There's a whole lot of arithmetic growth. There's a whole lot of even curves. You can get x squared, but you're not going to get real exponential growth in a natural system. But we're demanding exponential growth economically. So what happens? It has to come out of somewhere. That's why it comes out of the topsoil. It comes out of our lives. Digital technology was supposed to make more time for us originally. It was supposed to make more time. It hasn't. It's an always-on device strapped to our bodies, vibrating every time somebody's got a friggin' update. I got updates from things I don't even know what they are. And I live in this state of perpetual emergency interruption, where the surface area that I was talking about, the increased surface area for corporate capitalism, is human attention. So we spend more and more of our time feeding the marketplace. And that doesn't mean getting value from apps and things. So, no, the Red Queen effect, ultimately is BS. And so many business truisms are BS, not because they're mathematically wrong, but because they're based on the premise of our current corporate operating system as a condition of nature. Central currency and charter monopoly corporate capitalism is not a condition of nature. It is an operating system that was invented by certain people at a certain moment in history, and they've long since left the building. And we've opened the playbook as if this is just the way it's done. It's not the way it's done. Tell that young founder, tell yourself when you've got your good idea, the way it's done doesn't have to be to go find a venture capitalist to overvalue your company. It's not the best first next step. It doesn't lead to the most probable rewards for you, and it doesn't lead to you getting to do the business that you want to do. Adam, what is Uber's motivation to give 10% to drivers? Why isn't payment for services rendered enough? Payment rendered for services by Uber today is payment rendered to unemployed people who will do anything to have some income at all. It's taking advantage of a bankrupt society. Yeah, I could give a nickel to the guy with the paper cup. That's Uber's motivation to give 10% to its drivers is to be able to see its drivers as part of its company. It's to be able to understand that in the long term, if Uber cares about the ride business, which it probably doesn't, but let's pretend that it does. If it did, then it would want to have drivers wealthy enough to keep driving. It would want driving for the company to be something cool and prosperous to do, rather than something to go broke doing that you need to then find other drivers and other drivers and other drivers. It's the same reason why it's smarter for Costco to pay its workers a little something to give its workers some benefits, rather than to be like Walmart. Shareholders reward Walmart, who pays them less and makes them go broke because, you got them. You got them. You're sucking the value out. Good boy. But Costco has more revenue. Costco has better employee retention. Costco has better customer service. Costco is better positioned. Know who's driving Walmart out of business? Speaking about giving 10% of your company to your workers, there's a company called Winco out west. Winco is an employee-owned co-op supermarket that is putting Walmart out of business where it operates. And you go, how could that happen? How could they pay their workers more? How can they let their workers own the company and give better prices? Because they don't have all these shareholders to pay. These people who are taking 90% of the value that a company makes without doing anything but throwing capital at it, they are overhead. They are the cost cutting that we actually need to do. And if we think like programmers, if we think like people who actually have access to the code of our companies, we can easily flip the script. Take that big vacuum cleaner off your business and get to do business the way you'd really like to, making friends and prosperity everywhere you go. Thanks a lot. Come visit me downstairs. Oh.